Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's Wojciech here, a life networker. I'm so glad that you're here. So I'm really curious who is here with us. We got people on Facebook, we got people on LinkedIn and YouTube. So yes, today we're going to talk about cross-cultural differences, about remote work, about working on Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and other programs, and basically what kind of challenges we can face when it comes to talking on Zoom, and basically communicating with other cultures. So, hey, we have Meg here with us. Hello, Meg. Yeah, definitely. You can go to Life Networker on Facebook or on LinkedIn, on my personal profile, and share this with your connections, with your followers. So yes, definitely, this is something for you. If you're really passionate about cross-cultural communication, if you're passionate about remote work and communication, this life is for you, because we got a treat here today. My fantastic colleague, Kasia, lecturer at Cambridge University, specialist in intercultural communication. So I'm so happy to have her with us. So yeah, Kasia, hello. Hello. Great to see you here. So yeah, could you tell us more about yourself, about what you do, how do you help your clients? And in the meantime, I invite you guys to connect with Kasia, to say hello. And I'm really curious, what kind of cultures, how many countries we have here live. So yeah, Kasia, tell us about yourself.
First of all, welcome everyone, and Wojciech, thank you so much for having me. It's a great privilege, and almost it sounds like meeting an old friend in public. So always very happy. So what I do, I help organizations and individuals work more efficiently in an international environment. So we can say international, cross-cultural, multicultural, intercultural, but what we mean is people with a different culture background. And how I do it through awareness raising, through training and mentoring, and also on a one-to-one basis through mentoring and coaching. So yeah, this is me in a nutshell. I am originally from Poland, but I am based in the UK. I lived and worked here for over 15 years now, and I get culture shocked at home by my own children on a daily basis, I'm afraid. And I also lived and studied in Germany, so that's my international experience.
Even more culture clash. So yeah, we got Meg Turner with us. Hello, Kasia. She says, I was looking forward to this interview. Yeah, we're glad to to hear that. And we have Bill Murr as well. There you go. So many people interested in this live. Yeah, so by all means, please share this one with your followers, with your connections on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Yeah, because we're going to have really interesting case studies. We got Isabella, Dorota. Yeah, so we have multicultural team here with us. Yeah, I got this interesting case study that I would like to share with you guys, with you, Kasia, and I'm really curious what you're going to think about it. It's a case of multicultural communication on Zoom. One of the companies, and it's a friend of mine from Amsterdam. She's an intercultural trainer, and she said, "Hey, maybe you will find this interesting for your interview," because we talked, and I told her that we're going to talk about intercultural communication when working remotely. So she said, "Yeah, you're definitely going to love this." So, guys, imagine this situation. So it's a company with teams from UK, Japan, Italy, Spain, and Germany. So imagine situation when Peter, who is a manager and he is the boss from UK, is asking Shinji from Japan for for ideas regarding the recent development project. And reaction of Shinji is to close his eyes for a minute. And in the meantime, everyone finds it a bit awkward. And Carlo from Italy mutes himself and is answering his phone, and everyone can see that. And in the meantime, Pablo from Spain switched off the camera and is asking for a break because he's got another call to take. And the gentleman from Germany is saying that, hey, I'm not okay with unscheduled break. And Peter from UK is absolutely confused and he doesn't know what to do. So what's going on here, Kasia? What do you think, guys? Have you had any interesting situations like that when working on Zoom? What do you think, Kasia? What happened here?
I mean, look, it's such a cliche, right? When you first shared it with me, I thought it was from a textbook on intercultural communication, and then it said, "Yeah, it happened a few days ago on a Zoom call." So, yeah, I mean, it still happens, and it could be a face-to-face meeting. I mean, the bottom line is all these things could have happened in a face-to-face meeting. And yes, we have the typical generalizations with the Japanese colleague trying to find some space and some quiet, and by closing his eyes, and then others feel that it's awkward, and it would be awkward face to face as well. And then we have this cliche or stereotype of Carlo taking answering his phone from the client, and so it would be linked to this kind of almost obligation of and hierarchy, perhaps a mix of being available or answering the call from your boss. And actually, it happens with my clients in coaching sometimes when I coach Italian executives. They will eventually, they will every now and again take a phone call during the session because they just want to show the commitment. So it's still happening, right? And you also get Italians who will say, "Oh no, that's rude. I would never do it." So it very much depends. But it happened in the situation here. And then Pablo being, flexible around time, just, I need a 10 minutes break. And obviously the stereotypical German colleague or counterpart who is not flexible and says he's not prepared. He wasn't prepared for the unscheduled break. So, and the result is, of course, frustration. And Peter's frustrated because he wanted to lead the meeting and he can notice that, it's not going according to plan. So, my comment would be, what if this happened face to face? Well, very often, if it's an existing team and people have a different approach to work, they will know each other well, and they will just know, oh, that's what she does, that's what he does, right? If it's a new if it's the first meeting, or if it's a new team, then people need to get to know each other better, and they need to understand their cultures a little bit better for both remote and face-to-face working environment. But of course, everything is so exaggerated on Zoom, and silence is more exaggerated. Everything seems to last forever. So 5 seconds of silence on Zoom drag, and they feel like 10 seconds. It's more transactional. So it's not like you have, it's not like you meet 5 minutes before the meeting, if you're lucky, and have a bit of a chit chat and break the ice and, relax the atmosphere. You just turn on your, you join the meeting and everyone pops up and everyone is a small square and look the same, I was in a meeting this morning, and when 3 participants of the training I was leading, including myself, had the same Microsoft Teams virtual background. So it looked as if we were all in the same room. It was pretty funny, actually. So I think the point is that it just seems more exaggerated, more awkward, and more transactional. And when we talk about cultures, cultures don't communicate, people do. It's a famous saying, and it's just a little bit more transactional. And that's what causes, more upset, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And have you had situations like, there is a silence on Zoom, and then you have like, oh, do you have? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Or do we have a good connection? I think you're breaking up.
Yeah,
And-
you just assume. Yeah, you assume people people are on mute. And I experienced it this morning. I mean, I had a training session with some team members from Korea, and even when you ask them specifically to contribute, they still take a little bit of time to actually come up with a comment. And I was in the situation myself where I was holding back and just saying to myself, just wait a bit longer. They are going to say something, and they did, and it was great.
Yeah, we got a great comment from Bill. Thank you so much for this. Yeah, by all means, it's really exciting when you have loads of comments from you guys. So yeah, if you have any questions to Kasia about working remotely with other cultures, by all means do so, and share this if you have friends or connections that could be interested in this subject. So Bill says, I found some years ago when working with guys from the Middle East who became good friends that they would answer their phones during meetings, leave the meeting and come back later, and almost always turn up late. It's just a case of getting used to it. There is no point causing a fuss and trying to explain British customs to grown adults. Anyway, as I said, I became good friends with these guys and still am. So get there in the end. Thank you so much for this. What do you think about this?
I mean, yes, I think in an ideal world, at the beginning of a collaboration, you would spend some time talking about expectations, and you would try to understand what do the others need from the meeting. And of course, in an ongoing relationship, people better, and you have this relationship, and at some point you just realize that's what they need to do. That's what they value, and that's what's important. So you have to work with it, and you become a little bit more flexible. So maybe, maybe trying to book longer meetings, or, not try, avoiding booking back-to-back meetings when you know that it's likely to happen. There's, you just have to kind of, find synergy.
Yeah, that definitely. But what would you say to people, especially entrepreneurs and people in property or business, that they would say that actually we all speak business language. There is, there is no cultural difference. There are no cultural differences these days because we all in international environment. What would you say to that?
I mean, of course, it's not always culture, and things can go wrong in a homogeneous meeting. Of course, that's a fair point. And then you also can have a personality clash. You can have somebody who's very goal-oriented and comes across as pushy in every country. Or maybe you have people who tend to be more diplomatic. So, of course, the personality is very important. But culture is not about our personality and preferences. Culture is about what we consider a norm in a certain context. So how we perceive a meeting and what we think should happen in a meeting, and how should a meeting be managed, for example. This can be cultural. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's not always culture. Sometimes people are simply rude, but it can be culture, and it's often the blind spot, because I get to hear it actually, quite often that, in this day and age, we can't talk about culture. But remember, we tend to exclude language from it, but actually it doesn't have to be national culture. It could be organizational culture where people share similar beliefs and values. It could be a generational thing. It could be a gender thing, but ultimately nationality very often is something that brings people together through language. And of course, there are countries out there where people speak more than 2 or 3 languages, and it makes them very complex. But language is something that brings people together, and the way they communicate is something an outsider would notice. And also the educational system everyone went through, that would be something you experience through nationality. So that's still an interesting aspect, I would say. And I still believe there's a lot to be said about culture. But yeah, I mean, often I hear, it's not a culture issue, it's simply bad management. But then I talked to the teams on both sides, and they all believed the management was actually good. So then the question is, what's good management? What's bad management? And actually, it was culture. So good management, good timing tend to be perceived as generic, but often they are not.
Yeah, well, the thing is, how to recognize which is personal and which is cultural, yeah, let's leave it with it. And I have another question after that. But
Okay.
yeah, let's leave it here. How to recognize that?
I came up with a definition of culture last week, and this is going to be the official launch.
Wow, brand new definition. We love that.
And if you've heard it before, tell me, because I really think it's mine. So do let me know. So I was talking to a client last week, and he said, I speak the language, I'm proficient, and I've been working with these guys for years, and I've been living in this country for years, and I am well traveled. But there are moments where I'm the only foreigner in the group, and I feel that I don't belong. And to me, I had this idea that culture is maybe this moment where you feel you don't belong. So you can talk to an individual, from you have a great team from different cultures. But Wojciech, do you know this feeling where, you see a culture group together, and maybe it's your friends or colleagues that you work with on a daily basis, but there's suddenly something you notice about this group when you go, yeah, they have something in common, and I'm not part of this. So maybe this is where you can tell whether it's a personality thing or culture thing.
I like that. I felt like that, when I joined. There was a queue outside, one of the pubs to be served outside, and there was loads of Zoomers, slightly different generation than I, and I felt like out of place, like what I'm doing here.
Yeah, and of course, as we said before, it doesn't have to be nationality, and actually, even talking about Poland, there is such a generational gap in the way people manage people. The management style. We can definitely talk about the older generation and the new generation of managers, and it's completely different because of various things. So there could be culture differences within the country because of the political situation or history, or
Definitely. Okay. Well, you see, Isabella likes the definition as well. So thank you so much for this. And we got a couple of new people joining. Marlena, yes, it's great that you're here with us. And let's check this one out. So Meg Turner, hey, great that you're here with us. So Meg says, speaking of being flexible about the working hours, is it true, Kasia, that in Malaysia, no employee may finish and go home before the boss actually finishes their workload? Someone has once shared a story that a European manager got employed in a Malaysian corporation and wanted to finish up the workload, so decided to work late. And afterwards, it turned out that all the employees got annoyed that they could not leave work because the boss was still working. I found it so amusing.
So, Meg, of course, I've never lived or worked there, but I've heard a similar story at least 3 or 4 times from people I train. So there must be something in it. So it's something people have observed. So that there's definitely some truth in it. But of course, we can't say, yes, that would be every workplace in Malaysia every company, but I am inclined to say yes, that's true. Yeah.
Interesting. I found something similar when my partner Justina, when she went to Japan. That was also the case in Japan, where employees couldn't go home when boss stayed late. So, and they have to also come to work earlier before boss. So that's another one interesting. So.
Yeah, and but there's much simpler things. For example, time zones. I was training today, and there were Korean participants. So for them, that was the day of the day work, the end of the day work, and they had to stay longer in order to participate in the session. And then we had Europeans who had to join super early, and then I had to, on top of that, join even earlier because I was on the UK time, and that's European time. And then you notice that people have a different energy and they have a different mindset, because some are only starting and they are feeling fresh, but maybe also stressed out because they can see all the emails popping up in their mailbox. And then some are just tired because they've just finished a very long day at work, and suddenly they have to focus even more and look good on the camera. So even time zone is a tricky one.
There you go. We have comments from Mariusz. Interesting point of attention, Meg. I've experienced it in South Korea multiple times. Oh, there you go. So, Kasia, the question I wanted to ask is, how does virtual remote work affect communication when dealing with other cultures? Is it easier, or it's different, or is it challenging? What would you say to that?
Well, again, I mean, this is much more convenient. We don't have to travel far, but at the same time, we have less of this quality kind of bonding time. You just set up a meeting and you meet virtually, so there's less time to build relationships. And you are an expert on this, Wojciech, so it is the small talk, whatever the topics are in the given countries. We know that they can be different topics. You have the coffee machine, trips, and I think relationship come first, right? So it's much harder to do it via a webcam meeting. It is possible. You can still schedule. So say I run a training session that is 2 hours long, and I want to have a bit of an icebreaker in the first 15 minutes of the session, and chances that many people will come late are really high, sadly. So and because we are fully booked back to back, we often have to come late, because that's what happens. And ironically, we are actually working more than ever because we don't have to travel anymore. I think we tend to book a lot of meetings because there's no travel time. And back in the days, you would need a break to travel from one place to another, or walk, in fact. So I think in terms of the relationship building, it's much more difficult. However, many remote teams claim that actually they have a better relationship now because they used to be remote. They are still remote, but the use of webcam has become widespread, and they have more meetings and they are better managed, because we are talking about how to manage an effective Zoom meeting. So for teams that have always been remote, it's a better experience in the pandemic because people have the tools and the know-how to run those meetings. And for people who do not, for people who travel, that's harder. And it's especially hard for new joint ventures, for new teams, because back in the days they would meet, get drunk together, have lunch together, and now it's all gone. So I think that's one of the challenges.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more with this one. In the meantime, we have Mariusz. Comply to what your boss like to see in something in common in few Asian countries, but nobody measures productivity. My colleague literally had to sleep on the desk because of tiredness. It was upset to see, though. in my opinion, the work-life balance is lost. Yes, it's something similar in Japan. So definitely, some of the Asian countries got that characteristic, I would say. Eh?
Well, it's perception. I remember talking about it at Cambridge with some engineering students, and we talked about somebody's working day, and we said that this person would leave at 5, and the British student said, "Oh, that's late," and the Malaysian student said, "That's early." That's what it is. Culture
Yes,
is about perception, and it's not about right or wrong. It's just about different and acceptance.
yes, and it's for them it's normality. For them it's okay, and so I remember Justina telling the story when she was in Japan that there was like a video, not video, audio message inside the house of the Japanese family at about 7 p.m. It was information from council that they still work and they open for business and they're happy to help the whole community. And for her it was like, oh my god, they work so late and the office is still open, and for them it's kind of like, yes, they care about us, they inform us about this type of things. And for the European it was like, oh my god, that's so invasive. But hey, we have another one from Isabella. I think it is okay for existing teams as the relationship is already there, but it will be challenging for new teams where the relation is still not established.
Well, absolutely. And then, of course, we have the regular things such as bad light and you can't see somebody's face. There is the quality of the call, and sometimes we're dealing with accents. And again, sometimes it's hard to understand somebody, and the Zoom, there's a compromise because there's also video that, the sound isn't great. So, it's double trouble, really, even harder to understand. And there's unstable connections, calls dropping. And even if you establish some ground rules before the meeting that you would like to join with cameras on, there's still going to be somebody who can't because the camera's broken or maybe the connection is unstable. It happens all the time. So I think that the regular suspects, the time zones, the language issues, the technical issues, and also the Zoom fatigue, because we're spending so many hours doing this. This is my 7th hour. Today is a bit extreme, but we are naturally more tired, so it also affects our energy and maybe patience. And of course, there is additional stress caused by COVID, and you never know what is the other person going through at the moment. So that's adding to the already complex communication channel.
Oh yeah, and so there's so many things that going on and that could affect the communication. So yeah, couldn't agree more. An interesting case I had recently. I had a chance to speak to on Zoom to Chinese community, and what was very interesting is how it was. Guys, this moment on when you're on Zoom, when people can react with the thumbs up or with other reactions. So at some point, I had no reaction whatsoever. So I asked, if I did something wrong, just out of curiosity. So what happened is I did nothing wrong. It's just for their community, it was weird to react with thumbs up on the screen, and especially and I was like wondering, maybe they introverted and they don't like, it's like feeling emotions with the different kind of smileys on the screen and this and that, but they didn't feel comfortable with doing this thumbs up on the screen. What do you think about this one?
Totally agree, and I have experience with both face-to-face and online delivery of lectures or training to Chinese students or business people, and it's precisely that. But I mean, what I find fascinating is that there's often less body language, and the audience gives you less reassurance that actually they are listening. There's less nodding. There's less body language, and very often people work on their phones or laptops. But so so that's awkward for the speaker. I mean, for me, for yourself. But actually, very often they're actually more receptive. They're actually listening to you, and very often they come up with some fantastic questions at the end that prove that they've thought about what you said, and that they're trying to ask about something that is very profound. Very often they're not going to ask right at the end where you only have 2 minutes left and go, do you have any questions? So I tried that many times. It didn't work. I need to make sure I have at least 20 minutes for the Q&A, and the questions will come if you can survive the awkward silence.
Yeah, I've had it many times with especially with Asian communities, and then I got like loads of positive feedback, loads of questions afterwards, and I was like, oh my god! And I thought that I did so bad because there was no engagement whatsoever. So okay, Kasia. So what would be the first step in becoming a fluent in intercultural communication, both face-to-face and remotely?
I don't think it is about a knowledge gap. I mean, it is about the do's and don'ts sometimes, and they can be helpful and talking to people from different cultures, trying to understand their point of view or reading about it can definitely help. And by all means, do it if you can. But I think it's got more to do with you and your mindset and your acceptance of differences and your curiosity. It's just difficult to predict what's going to happen. It's not like, you have a meeting with a German, and because Germans are like that, this will happen. Not at all. Every situation is new. Every context is new. So I think it's linked to our qualities and strengths, and and how are we as communicators? Do we listen? Do we observe? We don't always have the chance to observe, but how do we facilitate the meetings? Do we manage expectations? Do we really send people some information prior to the meeting? This is what's going to happen. This is what we would like you to do if possible. Turn the cameras on, and so on. But remembering that not everyone will be able to do it or willing to do it. So that's again about resilience, because if something goes wrong, you can completely lose maybe temper, or maybe just lose your optimism about the meeting. But it's about realizing that's not going according to plan. What do I do next? So I would say it's more about your attitudes.
Definitely,
I'm answering the question.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, this first step was basically to be aware of the fact that we're all different, that we meet people from different countries from different cultures, and they have different set of rules. Whatever is standard for me, it's not exactly standard for other people, and for me that was a great opener to fully embrace communication with others. So I always try now to listen and observe emphatically with aim to understand and to be aware that at the end of the day we're all different.
Absolutely. And I think managing expectations, is for every meeting, not always a meeting with people from different cultures. Even today in the morning, I had this session where I put people in the breakout rooms and brought them back and asked them, about the experience. And yes, they answered the questions I'd given them, but they also said, actually, it was interesting to see that it's so much easier to talk to each other when the cameras, when the cameras are on. which suggested that they usually have conference calls without the cams on. So for them, that was the learning, that sometimes let's just switch this camera on, And I was actually surprised to hear that they choose not to for various reasons. So sometimes the learning is really kind of, it's almost like, what? Why wouldn't you do that? But there's one more, which I've realized, because in a way, Zoom is great because you can see people's names. So when you have a bigger meeting, then it's much easier to manage people in the room because you can see their names, provided they've changed the iPhone names to their proper name, right? You know what I mean? Sometimes people join with the weirdest names possible. And sometimes, when we encourage interactions, because we are told, make it interactive, because otherwise people will fall asleep or will start reading their emails. But actually, sometimes we are afraid of pronouncing somebody else's name in the wrong way, and we actually don't address this person. And that happens many times in the meetings and training sessions.
Hey, you.
And this stops people from the interaction. So this morning in the session, the first thing I did was I asked everyone to say their name twice, and I asked the others to write it down and to learn to write it down, the phonetic way of saying it that works for them. And for the first time, everyone was addressing others by their first name without, being afraid of being maybe discriminative, because some people are really worried about that. So that was such an easy thing, and I felt how the energy lifted, and actually you took this fear away, that, oh, I don't want to pronounce it the wrong way, so I better not address this person at all. So sometimes it's a very simple thing.
Definitely. I mean, we could talk for ages about this. And thank you so much for your time, Kasia. Thank you so much for your time, guys, for all the comments. Meg, Isabella, Bill, pleasure discussing this subject with you guys. If you want to continue, so, by all means, in the comment, you can find link to Kasia's LinkedIn. Yes, connect. And yeah, it's so much stuff going on. In Kasia's business now. She's got groups on Facebook. She posts videos, and she posts content on social media just to share her passion for intercultural communication. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a lovely one. Have a great week, guys, and see you next week. Kasia, once again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, guys.